to the second day of the MOC TCI Asia conference on clusters and the new normal in Asia. Okay. This conference is hosted by the National University of Mongolia. You must see there like an auditorium, a part of the normality that they can meet on site, and virtually the members of the two networks, the MOC and the TCI Asia, we are gathering in this virtual conference to explore how the new normal is shaping and to exchange experiences on how Asian clusters and innovation ecosystems are fast adapting to it. Yesterday, it was the MOC Asia Day, where the members of the MOC Asia Network shared some conceptual frameworks of clustering and the new normal in Asia. We also learned about the cases from Mongolia and Taiwan. And we tackled some of the new challenges around online teaching that many of the faculty are facing, and that I think are the same for all kinds of online facilitation that we all have in our daily meetings today, also for clusters and for business networks. And today we start this second day, the TCI Asia Day, where we will focus more on the practice of clusters, yeah? Sorry, there is some background noise. Don't know who is, but please, if you are not speaking, can you mute your microphones, except in key? Okay, thank you. Yeah. Well, to make a link between the 2 days, the research and the practice, let me tell you a bit about my personal story, because I am myself also a graduate from the MOC course. I participated in 2006 in the course in Bilbao, taught by at the Deusto University with some of your colleagues from the MOC faculty. I did together with my teammates my project on the winter sports cluster in Andorra. And the MOC course gave me a strong conceptual fundamentals on microeconomics that I think it's a discipline that in my experience is not very well covered in the regular educational programs that I followed before. And it also offered me a framework to understand the competitiveness components and dynamics. And that has gone along with me my whole professional life. It gave me a wider understanding of my local innovation ecosystem, also together with my colleagues from the Basque Country, and also opened me new doors. And one of that new international links I met was the TCI network, where I have been working then for 12 years. So to all the MOC Asia faculty, I'm sure you are creating a great impact in all your places, all your countries, at many levels, in your local economies and innovation ecosystems along the different generations, and you will see more and more coming in the next years. So today we start the second day with this TCI Asia webinar, where we want to show how global clusters are working in practice in times of coronavirus and adapting to the new normal. Our president in TCI, Merete Daniel-Nielsen, will cover this with a focus on rethinking the existing cluster development models and bringing some of the global trends that we foresee in TCI, yeah? We will showcase some global cases on this, and then we will have a panel conversation with the TCI Asian members of the TCI network. We will see how clusters and economic development organizations are making a difference in the path to economic recovery in Asia. We have 2 hours to go through all this. Let me introduce you the panel of experts who are with us today. First of all, from the National University of Mongolia, and our host today, Tzvelma Kjargas. Hello, Tzvelma. Let me say a big thank you, because organizing a conference is a huge thing. It's a great collaborative effort. Thank you for bringing us together in a difficult year. The easiest thing would have been to say, sorry, we can't, and instead you say, yes, we can. And here we are. So thank you very much, Tzvelma. Then we have Anukal. Anukal Tiralaknastanakul, the chair of the TCI Asia chapter. He's an associate professor at the National Institute of Development Administration in Thailand. And currently he is the director of the Joint Executive MBA program, and he's in the committee of the Accelerated MBA program. Anukal, welcome.
Thank you.
I want to send also a very warm regard and big thank you to Professor Ryu. Sorry. To Professor Gegyu Ryu and our members from KICOX in Korea. They were the ones who led the first steps of the ASEAN chapters only a couple of years ago as a hub to exchange knowledge and to share experiences from ASEAN clusters. Today we continue this work with more inspiration, more knowledge, and more networking. Hello, Merete. Daniel Nissen, our president, also. She has another hat. She's also co-founder and director of Cluster Excel Denmark. It's the organization in charge of implementing the Danish cluster strategy. And they support cluster organizations on competence development, on professionalization of cluster managers, and on internationalization of their cluster initiatives. Welcome, Merete. Thanks for being with us today. Tony Lin.
Hello.
Hello, Tony. From the Industrial Technology Research Institute in Taiwan. Tony is a researcher, and he is now working also as think advisor for the Ministry of Economic Affairs of the Taiwan government, and participating in the National Economic Policy Initiative and Evaluation. I don't see him connected so far, but we will have also Professor Kashchulun from the National University of Mongolia. He was with us yesterday. We will join in later on. And I want to welcome, give you a very warm welcome, you all, our participants in this second day of the conference. We have more than 80 registrants. Welcome everyone. Please make use of the chat to make comments, make questions, analysis, and we will try to intercalate during the conversation with the speakers and panelists, all of them. And for your information, we will be recording this webinar for later dissemination among the members of the MOC and the TCI network. Well, I will start today. Let me share my first presentation. Let me tell you a little bit more about TCI. This organization, you have been listening quite a lot about it. Okay. Can you see it, my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. TCI stands for the Competitiveness Institute, but we prefer to call ourselves the TCI network. Sorry, I'm going to.
Sorry, Patricia, I have a suggestion. Yeah, but it's up to you. I think others should turn off their microphone.
Exactly, yeah. I did that. Okay. Yeah, I said, and it's a network of people and organizations working in clusters all over the world. We are the global network. For us, being global is really like our key asset and what makes us really different and unique, I would say. Our mission is to inspire and strengthen connections, knowledge, and competences for people and organizations working with clusters and innovation ecosystems around the globe. And our business is built on 3 pillars: collaboration, inclusiveness, and sustainability. And we want to expand the power of collaboration towards more inclusive and sustainable societies. Yeah. We have 3 strategic areas that guide our activity. One is global connections. The second one is inspiring clusters. And the third one is policy learning. In the first one, global connections, we want to provide access to peers and to experts around the globe to enrich cluster networks and to provide collaboration opportunity with partners, with like-minded partners. Yeah. Here we have many activities related. I will tell you later on some of them and what changed before COVID and after COVID. And on the second strategic area, the inspiring clusters, we want to inspire new models of high-performing clusters by improving cluster competences and capabilities. And in the third one, the policy learning, we want to inspire and speed up learning to update and upgrade policies for inclusive development with a cluster approach. This was our strategy that we built last year through a joint, some very nice joint discussions with our board of directors and also with inputs from other members, our board of advisors and so on. And I think it's totally up to date after COVID also. You know, the policy learning, for example, is one area that where we see we will have to develop more. The public sector will have more relevance in the future even, and there will be more interventions on many areas where I'm sure that the policymakers will need more training and more inspiration. This is a photo of our members. We have 78 organizational members in TCI. 500 active persons make part of the network. And through our activities, we reach out to 9,000 practitioners in more than 100 countries. Let me highlight our TCI organizational members in Asia: the National Institute of Development Administration, Thailand, the Industrial Technology Research Institute in Taiwan, the KICOX, Korea Industrial Complex, the Union of Kansai Governments in Japan, KIDI, Kazakhstan Industrial Development Institute, and the Institute for Competitiveness, India. Thank you all. We are a membership-based organization and you are an important part of TCI. How we organize, and now we show images of people. It's so important, the people, to make a network like TCI running. And this is our board of directors that is led by Merete from Cluster Extended Denmark, but we also have a prominent lineup of cluster researchers, practitioners, policymakers. So it's like a big photo of the people in the network. We have James Wilson, who leads the TCI evaluation group, also from Orchestra, the Basque Institute of Competitiveness. We have Emily Wise, also from Sweden, and very active in many European projects and initiatives, and also advising governments in the northern countries on their cluster strategy. Rasmus Beck from Germany, Business Metropole Ruhr, Vincent Dugre from Canada, Peter Kelle from Hungary, in the government of finance, responsible for all the cluster implementation in Hungary. Evgeny Kotchenko from the Moscow School of Economics, also working closely with many Russian clusters. Marco Llenas from the Bogota Chamber of Commerce, in charge of a cluster portfolio of 17 cluster initiatives in Bogota region. Professor Rio, who unfortunately had to step down because of health reasons. We miss him a lot, and we hope for the next elections we will have also an Asian representative. I encourage those of you who have an interest to present a candidature and to get in touch with us to have also a representative from Asia in our board of directors in the next year. Tracy Scone-Remington from Australia. I will show you later on some of the outputs from the Australian conference also, and I will mention her. And Asta from the Iceland tourism cluster. we got this year very interesting inputs from her, how she's adapting the strategy of the cluster to the new times after COVID, and how they are rethinking on the new strategy of tourism in the country. Okay, we also have a board of advisors, and this is a photo of a part of it. Maybe you know some of them. Christian Ketters from Harvard Business School. We also have Michael Porter, Professor Orjan Solvel, who was yesterday with us addressing a keynote, and many other top-level thinkers and from very different disciplines. We have Ifor Fox-Williams, that I see him connected today. He's one of the persons who have been working for long and with more extend background in cluster development all over the world. I don't know how many countries he has been working, but he has advised, I think, half of the world on clusters. And many other ex-presidents of TCI and people who is in charge of cluster areas, different cluster areas, like for example, Utum Korea from Botswana National Strategy Team, or Arantxa Tapia from the Basque government, at the moment the vice president of the Basque government and in charge also of the Basque development, cluster development in Spain, in Europe. Well, and we have a very small but powerful team. We are at your disposal if you want to connect with us. This is our emails, and also we are based in Barcelona since the beginning, and you can reach us in any way. Now we are all teleworking. Still telework is recommended here in Spain, so we are connected from our homes. Well, let's go then into the topic. I wanted to show you what was on the agenda of the global cluster community before the COVID. This is some of the topics that arise from a survey that we did with our members of what was on their agenda, like 1 year ago, more or less. We were talking about cluster strategy, how to adopt the right cluster strategy and prioritize activities that mean growth for companies. We also talk about consolidation of clusters, how to expand collaboration opportunities through collaboration based on trust, not force, diversification of services and activities of the cluster, engagement of private sector, facilitation, governance, internationalization, digitalization, training for cluster teams and companies, all the, let's say, the day-to-day activity of the clusters. We also see that cluster expansion is one of the things that where clusters are working more, how to scale up, how to bring new business opportunities, how to adapt to change, and look what came after that. Organizational changes also, foresight with the future of the value chains, clusters and smart specialization strategies. This is something that is very important in Europe, at least in some other parts also. The policy also, improve the definition and implementation of public policies, how to get more public involvement and commitment on funding, consistency of governmental support, coordination of policy instruments, building trust among government and other stakeholders, training for policymakers, lack of cluster specialization in governments. This is something I have heard a lot in Asia, for example, and I think we will be tackling on that later on in our panel. Then another block was sustainability of cluster organizations, how to create revenue streams, sustainable funding structures for the clusters. What is a suitable mix of public and private funding, and how is life after a discontinued program? In many places where the funding goes, the cluster closes, and this is something that it's, well, I think it's a waste of time and effort for many people. And the last thing, monitoring, evaluation, and communication. many of our members indicated that we need to find the right indicators and evaluation frameworks to evidence the benefits of cluster work and make us understand the essence of working with clusters. Well, this was also live before COVID. We also travel to very nice places in our conferences. TCI is well known because we are received by in outstanding places that are well renowned for the cluster and competitiveness strategies, from the strengths of their innovation ecosystems and their people. And we can say that more than 5,000 professionals from 130 countries have attended the TCI conference, and we hope we have helped them to advance in the practice of cluster development, and also to network and to make their cluster environment bigger and more rich. Yeah. Unfortunately, we had to cancel or to postpone, sorry, our global conference that was going to be held in Kazan, in Tatarstan, in Russia, in 2020. But we are very glad to tell you that all the commitment of the partners is still in place for next year. So we will be meeting in September 2021. In Kazan. Hopefully this is like a very positive scenario that we all look at. Let's think we can meet there, because we really miss the interaction with the members face to face. You know, these Zoom meetings are okay, but we also want more closeness, and we all agree, I think, that more innovation and more connections come from the face-to-face meetings. And for 2020, we will go virtual. We are working on an inspiring conference on 2 days, the 14th and the 15th of October, around reinvention and transformation of clusters, that we think is like the hot topic this year. We need to tackle together what are the challenges ahead of us. We hope to have inputs from Asian clusters also. I welcome you to participate also in the conference. Yeah. Okay. So what happened after COVID and how we mobilized the TCI network to face the COVID-19? First, we wanted to send a support message to all the members saying we are all in this together. You're not alone. We will help you to identify solutions, to identify best practices, to see what others are doing, and to also work together on what is the path to the new normal. And our life became virtual, as you can see below in these meetings, gatherings with members that we had. I think this was the very first one, or one of the first one. We all have like more sad faces than usually. We were going through tough times, but it was good to share and to talk. I think it's one of the best things that we could do, to stay together and to exchange our thoughts, what we were doing, how we were doing, and to be together in this. We also handled some virtual workshops. For example, our workshop in Milan on evaluation and how to evidence the impact of clustering was a virtual workshop that we had in April. We had many gatherings and webinars. For example, here's also one of the last ones on how economic development organizations are helping today and preparing for the new normal, with Cluster Excellence Denmark and Upper Austria, two leading regions, sharing their insights and what they were doing. We also ran a global survey on sector-specific impact of COVID and the role of cluster managers in ramping up. Merete will tell you more in depth about the content later on. I will just mention here. We also prepared and wrote a TCI recovery playbook by Merete, Daniel Nielsen, and by Christian Kettels. So the two heads of our governing bodies, the board of advisors and the board of directors. And we have here Tony presenting the case of Taiwan in that webinar. Thank you, Tony, for participating there also. We will also tell you later more about the TCI recovery playbook, that I think it's a very useful tool for economic development organizations and for cluster organizations in the path to economic recovery and the new roles that you will have to adopt. And then the chapters. Well, the life in the chapters also changed. We also go virtual, and well, for example, in Latin America, we see what was the Latin American perspective before COVID, how the clusters and business networks are helping the SMEs in Latin America, how also the productive agendas are changing from the supporting institutions to help SMEs and to help collaboration. This is the also the result of the TCI Oceania conference. We had three webinars on the shock, the survival, and the transform after. We could cover very interesting things. Tracy's contributing on the TCI Oceania chair says concluded that clusters are responsive, agile, they take actions, they can be agents of change and transformation. And I like this, let's not waste a good crisis. This side, I think it's a very good one. And I want to show you, for example, one of the things that the clusters are doing in these times. This is also from the Oceania chapter. I will show you first a video here from the Food Agribusiness Network in the Sunshine Coast. The voice is from the cluster manager, Emma Greenhatz. Let me stop sharing here to share again on the YouTube, because this is public on YouTube for everyone. That's just 1 second. And finally, there we are. Okay. Sorry. Yes, I'm sharing also the sound. Okay, I hope it works.
There's an exciting buzz in the Greater Sunshine Coast region. Farmers, processors, retailers, exporters and chefs are all coming together to celebrate our region's vibrant, healthy and especially innovative food culture. FAN is about making connections across the entire value chain from farm to plate. Members feel a part of a supportive community and have the opportunity to give back too. Importantly, FAN facilitates face-to-face networking through workshops and events. FAN is about starting conversations, facilitating opportunities, sharing knowledge and collaborating. The food and agribusiness landscape is changing, and it's an important time for industry to come together so that we can shape our future. By actively working together, I believe we can double the region's food and agribusiness economy by 2030. To become a FAN member, go to foodagribusiness.org.au.
Nice, isn't it? I think we all want to go to Australia now, take a flight and be there. Okay, I go back to my presentation. This is what FAN is doing now. I will send you the presentation and you can read it all, but in the last part is, I think, FAN Connected on 7 April, so at the very beginning of the pandemic. They launched its new Fan Connected platform to connect their 300 members. More than just a business directory, it is an online hub and marketplace designed to improve business outcomes by connecting members with their own network and also with other business groups. I think this kind of networking and connection is what many clusters have been doing in these difficult times, and what really brought more value to the network and the members. Merete will go later on this. And then I want to show you another video. I find it in YouTube. This is a video that was made during the campaign for our last global conference in Flanders. This is the website where you can see this Flanders clusters present, yes, together we can. In Flanders, the northern region of Belgium, together means stronger, more innovative, more impactful. This spirit is also what drives the region's spearhead cluster and innovative business networks, where private companies, public organizations, and academic institutes come together to take research and development to new heights. I think it's a very nice way to present clusters, very appealing to the general audience. This is something that we see we have a lot of room to improve, how to communicate better the work in clusters to other areas, not to the believers. Let me show you this one, the Bike Valley.
Bike Valley is an innovation hub where we bring together companies for faster, safer and healthier cycling. At Bike Valley, we want to bring together companies, mainly startups, together with research institutions, the government, and we want to achieve the same goals because we face the same challenges. Together we can accomplish 4 main goals. The first goal is to bring together science and industry to make cycling faster, safer, but also healthier. As a second goal, we want to build smart mobility solutions together with the government and the industry. The third goal is helping startups by giving them more access to the market, but also by delivering them an excellent infrastructure. The final goal is boosting cycling tourism by giving tourists, but also companies, an excellent experience here in the neighborhood of Bike Valley. As Bike Valley, we really want to become a Silicon Valley for cycling by bringing together our companies and by stimulating them to work together.
So this is what I wanted to share with you. This was my introduction, and now I leave the floor to Merete Daniel Nielsen, our president in TCI. Hello, Merete. Let me share also your presentation.
Thank you, Patricia. And while you find my presentation, again, a warm welcome from my side to the participants. It was a great start yesterday. Thank you, Selma and the team from the university for organizing with the MOC network and TCI Asia chapter. And thank you to Patricia for an excellent presentation of our network. I hope you all got a good flavor of what we have been doing. So now I will try to go a bit deeper and explain our TCI perspective on the power of collaboration and why clusters are so important for businesses and societies when we are on this very difficult path back to a better normal. Sometimes I try to call it also a better new normal. So, but really underlining that we see clusters have proven themselves and what they matter in these times of crisis. So, that's good news for all of us pioneering the importance of clusters. So I will share with you some also what is a cluster for the ones of you wondering, and what is best practices, some of the global best practices, and as Patricia also mentioned, what have we seen happened with clusters over the last 3 or 4 months. So yes, take the next slide, please, Patricia. Yeah, so just going back a bit, and I know for the ones in the MOC network, this might seem a bit basic, but just to, you know, make this very clear that because clusters have been around, I mean, for many thousand years, more or less, but this was Michael E. Porter's book that really put this together, saying that clusters are this closely connected group of companies and associated institutions that work in a particular field where they are linked to commonalities and externalities. So this really set the ground for the work, and has been like a defining book for many years. So yeah, so next slide, please, Patricia. So then over the years, of course, the definitions and our understanding of clusters has changed quite a lot. So this is the Cluster Initiative Green Book, also presented at a TCI conference at some point. And you see Jørgen Sølvell and Christian Kittels were the main authors here back in 2003. And they talked about a cluster initiative being this organized efforts. So on top of the natural cluster, we also need an organizational effort, because it's the organization that really kicks off the competitiveness and the growth in the cluster within the region, where to involve the companies, the government, and all the research communities. So the next slide, yes. So what we see in the later years, and this is a nice publication last year from Christian Rangen on building innovation superclusters. So that publication is also online. And now what we see now is even more core institution involved in the clusters. So apart from what we normally say about the companies, the governmental side, and the knowledge institutions, now we also see more entrepreneurs moving in and more investors moving in. And now in many programs in the leading regions in Europe, this is the pillar, this is the foundation in a cluster. So so we talk about now not the triple helix, but also, you know, more another kind of structure in the cluster. And what we see is really important now is what we talk about in the cluster secretariat. You just saw two very nice examples, the one from Australia and the one from Belgium. And these people really matter a lot. So the cluster managers are very important, and we also have actually several training courses around for that. So again, if there's something you want to go deeper into, I know Patricia can also help you to share the different training courses on cluster management and cluster development. Yes, so next slide, please. So what we see now, and why clusters are really a core actor for trying to mitigate and deal with this crisis, is that it is in the DNA of a cluster to facilitate a neutral platform, because we need many different stakeholders. And I think the fan video said it really nicely, that we just need to join forces to tackle the challenges. So we need companies on board, we need knowledge institutions. It might not just be, you know, universities, but also vocational schools. We need money, we need private money, we need public money, we need public authorities, especially during this health crisis. We see the importance of understanding, you know, health regulations and requirements. And we also need branch institutions, organizations, or lobby organizations. And also NGOs are part of many clusters. And the strength of the cluster is that it's not political, it's neutral. And we see many clusters now having this role of fostering transition and innovation through the partnerships. And this is digitalization, this is about sustainable transition, and also dealing with the consequences of Industry 4.0. And this is, we see clusters are good at creating impact. So it is about getting access to new knowledge for companies. It's about getting upgraded for the right skills. And it's about speeding up innovation. It's about getting access to the finance. It might be the public or the private funding, new markets, or collaborating with partners both nationally but also globally. We see that's a clear trend in the best performing clusters that they have a part of a global market now. So the next slide, please. Yeah. So basically, you can say we say clusters work. So it's as Patricia say, the ones of us knowing that this concept is a good concept. We still have to prove that it works. But there's so many analyses now. In Denmark, in my own organization, we've done one big analysis on that companies that are part of a cluster, they actually raise the innovation power by 4 times. So that's quite a lot. They also become more productive. So companies in clusters raise their productivity by 3.6%. They also become more international. Many SMEs struggle with becoming international or globally. So below this is a map from my Danish cluster community and the outreach on the global level. So Denmark might be small, but the clusters are part of a very global active community, and they reach out to 60 countries around the world. So also clusters work for SMEs wanting to become more international. So that's also very nice. Yes. At the European level, a lot of very nice analysis have been done as well. And there's a link to some English documentation as well, that clusters matter in terms of raising wage, about, again, the global frontier firms, high growth companies, and also helping startups really growing a lot more, because this is a normal challenge that SMEs are not getting the right help in the beginning, and so being part of a cluster can also help speeding up on the growth. Yes, so next slide, please. Yeah, so why do clusters start? That's also a very common question we get quite a lot. And we do see some different driving sources. And with Ivo in the room as well, I can almost hear him. So it's good to have the companies in the driver's seat, because then we're really sure that it's aligned with the companies. We also see some good examples being driven by knowledge institutions or vocational schools, because they also have a very good connections with the local business communities. We also see some cases where the public stakeholders take a driver's seat. And normally we talk about it's also a matter of personal dedication, because we need entrepreneurs or these people that really see a need for driving a cluster forward in their sector. In general, we can see across, and I think this was also what we saw from the nice films before, that some of the challenges we face are just at size and scale so big that we need new models for collaboration businesses, and many of the challenges we face are basically a challenge that no company or no municipality or no university can handle on their own. So we really need to join forces and collaborate. And we can see that cluster collaboration is really a good way to organize the new knowledge society, because it's a way of speeding up the transition of knowledge and insights across much easier and faster. So some of the new tasks in clusters is about digitalization. It is about circular economy, because that's on the agenda. It's still on the agenda. I'll come back to that. It's about automatization. We need more robots in our businesses and in our companies, and clusters are a really good way of helping and upskilling companies on that. We also need new skills. It's an ongoing thing to be upskilled. There's also many areas where there's a lack of skills. So clusters are also a core player in that. They're also really good on the globalization, because they're very operational. And we can also see they have some special skills in dealing with the consequences of the Corona-19. So the next slide, please. Yeah, so just going briefly into a little bit, we talk about different kind of cluster development journey. And this is a ladder we developed. And in some cases, actually some clusters go more or less to be national right away or international, while others stay locally. So it's, I mean, not all clusters go through all of these phases, but just to let you understand the 4 phases. So the first one is that it might be very locally. So we see many small local clusters. They sometimes don't even call themselves a cluster. It more might be a business network or a hub. There are many interesting names. We can also see sometimes municipalities or cities are very active because they see a need to do something, but also bigger companies saying we need to take a leading role in starting this initiative. Some stay local because this is, you know, natural for them, but others also have a really big development potential because they might build on a very local specialization in robotics or in sound that might have a global perspective or potential. Then we have regional clusters. They normally build on more regional strongholds, or they wish to develop as such. I think right now what we see many places are very strong on life science or in health, the health sector. So they want to, of course, utilize this in this moment. Normally they get a lot of regional funding from regions, and sometimes we see the regional strategy are quite aligned with the clusters. As Patricia mentioned, in Europe we had this smart specialization, and this is a way of really interlinking the strategies and the clusters. Then we have some national clusters. They cover more national strongholds and has national funding. They might be on their way of becoming these innovation superclusters, as Christian Range talks about. They might have started locally or regionally, but some start also more or less up nationally, depending, of course, a bit on the size of the country. Then we have a few very international clusters. They are normally quite mature. They've been around for 5-10 years. They have some type offices abroad. They have many partners they collaborate with, and they build up this super cluster structure across many regions and many countries and also many stakeholders. So the next slide, yes. So what are typical activities in clusters? This is trying to make an overview, and not all clusters might do everything because it doesn't make sense basically. So this is where it's very important to be aligned with the needs among the members and the companies, and to understand what are the specific needs in this cluster. So we see many clusters is about this matchmaking, bringing core stakeholders together, so the companies and the knowledge institutions, and this might lead into different kind of activities like innovation projects or competence development or internationalization. Some clusters are perhaps more stronger on the business side, so they work more with entrepreneurship or access to funding. So each cluster has a different way of organizing this service portfolio, as we call it. What we see like more on the right is on this transformation, on also being program operators, because clusters are quite good at pushing more operational stuff. And this is sometimes what policymakers are really looking for, because you have the strategies, but then you need somebody to implement. And this is where clusters can really play a core role in, okay, taking on, you know, we need more skilled labor force. So the cluster are part of making that happening. Yes, so the next slide, please. And I will just wait a bit. I hope it is coming. So what we, of course, can see is that these services also changed a bit. Yeah. So going a bit into, again, the supercluster idea, and also just bringing in some global inspiration. So So when we visited had the global conference in Canada some years ago, it was very inspiring to see this new Canadian supercluster. Basically, the Canadian government said, yeah, we need this initiative because we want to do something different. We have done many things, it's not working that much, and now we are initiating this supercluster approach. So this was 5 years funding. It started up basically that October when we were in Toronto, and they selected 5 clusters in a bottom-up process. So you see the funding is quite substantial, and it also had to be topped up by private co-funding. And they had very high ambitions in Canada about more growth and more about raising GDP, and also raising innovation in all corners of Canada. I think this is a challenge in many countries, and so its innovation cannot just be big city thing, but also has to be in many places. And the aim and the hope is, of course, that the superclusters will really bring in more innovation partners and also help to grow the regional economies. Yes, so the next slide, please. One case that was also brought forward in Toronto with the case of Odense Robotics as a best practice in setting up a good strategy. And they basically want to be one of the world leading robotic cluster. Well, nobody really know where Odense is, apart from the ones that really love Hans Christian Andersen, so they know it's his birthplace. But they really have winning aspirations. They want to be one of the world leading clusters. They focused a lot on skilled workforce. They focus a lot on being very entrepreneur-friendly environment to also attract private and public investors. They run an incubator program, and they organize this Robot Hero program. So if you Google Robot Heroes or We Are Robot Heroes, you will find that they really took on this hashtag and run a lot of Facebook commercials to really attract more employees to the area and also to highlight the importance of the robotics. And actually right now in this time of Corona, they really had a lot of success in developing specific robots for disinfection of hospitals. So they might be very local cluster, but they immediately had a global aspiration and really helped kickstart a local robot adventure. So it's a very nice example. So next slide, please. So what we can also see in the Odense robotic case is the clusters. So this is still a very local cluster, but the strength in this cluster is that it's about organizing stronger and stronger ecosystems. So on the top you see the companies, but it's also about bringing in the investors. It's about bringing in a range of different knowledge institutions. It's about bringing in also branch organizations. So they really try to cover the whole ecosystem and not just the companies, I'm sorry to say that, but also really saying, okay, what is the whole innovation system around our cluster? And they actually just merged now with 2 other clusters. So they have a drone cluster and another robotic cluster. So now they're really growing in scale and in ambitions and setting new strategic aims for their cluster. Yeah. So now when we are still on this notion of a global supercluster, so another example is the International Clean Tech Network. So this consists of 7 or 8 green clusters around the world. So they have like different offices around the world, and then have joined forces, and then have actually on top of each of the clusters a small cluster secretariat, facilitating the collaboration between each of the clusters. So they see clean tech is a global thing, and they want to join forces across each of these more, so to say, local spots. They've been in place for 3 or 4 years, I guess, and have very high ambitions of being having leading clusters in the network, and also really helping the clusters on top. You see Flux 50 in the middle. It was a cluster we saw last year in Flanders when TCI was there. So they really tried to handpick the best clusters and create collaboration between the clusters. So on the notion of this green transition and on sustainability, and that's also very important for TCI, as Patricia also mentioned, is that we try to understand what is the role of clusters in the sustainable transition of SMEs. We can see the clusters had very good impact. So this is an analysis I was part of doing last year, and I presented in TCI in Antwerp, saying, okay, so we interviewed the clusters and to understand what is how do they impact the clusters or the SMEs. So it's about new processes and competences and new knowledge. This is a true strength in the clusters. They access new knowledge and also help with the finance and the markets and the skills. And we can see right now, I think in Europe, we talk about having around 250 green clusters. But the push now in Europe is that all clusters are more or less expected to have a significant green profile. So even clusters in ICT or in life science or in robotics or in production, they should all focus on the UN sustainable goals, and they should also have a green profile. So this is a big push in Europe right now. Yeah, so we developed this model, and you can take a look afterwards. As Patricia said, that the presentations will be shared, but this is about what are the specific areas where the clusters really help with the companies in this transition to a green economy. So next slide, please, Patricia.
Yes, Merete, meanwhile, let me remind the panelists and the participants that they can make questions. At the end of Merete's presentation, we will open a round of questions, so please get ready. Thank you.
Yes, so and then last week we had a bit of a historic moment in Europe. So we had this very high level meeting between the EU Commission and this European Cluster Alliance. So the European Cluster Alliance is an alliance between more than 700 clusters in Europe, and we had a very nice meeting between the European Cluster Alliance and this EU Commissioner Thierry Breton, about what is the role of clusters in the next generation for the EU. And what was very nice to hear was very strong messages from Thierry Breton on how essential clusters are in accelerating the transformation in the EU. So he really underlined that clusters should be part of the recovery plan and have a core role in this transformation. And we saw also some nice case examples of that. So that's also online in case you're interested in that. But so a very nice and very productive discussion on the potential of clusters and also the role of clusters in the recovery. So the next slide, please, Patricia. Yeah, so what Patricia mentioned, and this is also online on our TCI homepage, is that in the beginning of the crisis in Europe, early April, we asked cluster managers in Europe and also around the world about how have you seen the impact of the Corona-19? Because the cluster managers at that point, I mean, they are so close to companies and the ecosystems, so they could really early on assess how has this been impacted. And we, of course, saw some sectors being very economic, having very high economic impact, and also some sectors that were more transformational than others. And not so surprisingly, of course, the digital economy might have been the ones that really has some are the champions now. So because they have been able to push more solutions and really offer more in this crisis, while we also, like with tourism, seen a sector is severely hit in many countries. As Patricia mentioned, our cluster manager from the tourism cluster in Iceland kickstarted some very nice discussions on how to rethink tourism. But I mean, still without that, it's no doubt that this is a sector in deep crisis. One of the few winners in all of this might be life science, because they have new solutions and new things to offer, but also some companies in the life science sectors are also severely hit by this global crisis. So the next slide, please, Patricia. Yeah, also an outcome of our many TCI webinars over the spring is to understand the different roles the clusters had taken. We see that this has proven the strength. Some clusters act as this neutral platform to deal with the shock. Some have been very good in supporting their members to act as a change agent to transform early on, because the companies more or less overnight needed new inspiration, new insights, new ideas on how to transform their businesses. They also needed new solutions, or they needed also to adapt their production. And what was also a strength is the clusters, how good they are with the ecosystems and really pushing this forward. So, so many good and very different examples of how the clusters responded and also developed new services to help the companies. So the next one, and I guess this is the final one. So trying to understand a little bit what is the new better normal. So I mean, from TCI Network, we've been in dialogue with around 200 clusters globally. They work with around 25,000 companies. So some of the trends we see is that companies are still in need of innovation, and many companies actually see this need for innovation is rising. So it's not like it's not important anymore, it's actually grown in importance. We can also see that many companies and clusters hasn't canceled the green transition. It's just much more difficult because, of course, there's a struggle in the businesses, and the money available has in many cases been used for the crisis. We can also see that globalization is still on the agenda. Of course, it's a discussion if we are now going more local, or focusing more on the local markets, but globalization is really still on the agenda when we talk to the cluster managers. They try to develop new digital solutions. They try to re-navigate to find other solutions or redefine the way of collaborating. We can also see that this immense digital push has already led to more digitalization of SMEs. More companies has developed apps, and they are exploring more and new business opportunities. So that's also very interesting to see how this plays out in the following months and years. We get the feedback that this power of collaboration has proven the worth during this time of crisis, because this has been a platform to meet and talk and deal with crisis and develop new solutions. And within the TCI network, we also experienced a lot of interest over the last month. So really many people joining our webinars and asking new questions about clusters and how to set up a new program. And we also try to help with, policy advice on how to get that going. So, and we will come back to the TCI recovery playbook, but just to highlight it again. So this is also, as Patricia mentioned, our advice to all of you working this area on how clusters can play a role in this, and also some cases on how to make this happen. Yes, so I think that's all for me.
Thank you, Merete. This was very nice. Going deep into modern clustering. I think this was a very nice compilation of all the new concepts that most of the clusters all over the world are going through, and yeah, many of the things that I'm sure our Asian members are also working with. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Let me go to the questions here. There's a question. Yeah, European cluster examples to share learnings and best practices are very good chances to push for more clusters collaboration between Europe and Asia.
Yeah, I fully agree. I mean,
Clusters.
yeah, I mean, when I talk to European clusters, and even in these times of crisis, it's not like, I mean, I think just 5 years ago, it was more like, okay, then we collaborate, with the Germany or Spain or Sweden. But I think the new agenda for many clusters in Europe, that this is Shanghai, or this is Seoul, or this is Beijing. So this is, and Japan. So we might have a crisis right now, but the will is still there, and they just trying to find new ways of keeping that collaboration going. And I also see from a big interest still from the Danish government and from many governments in Europe, and also this meeting with Terry Bertrand from the EU Commission last week is also about how do we still keep the global connections going. So we just need to reinvent and find other ways of meeting and matchmaking and collaborating. So that's still very much on the table, and clusters are really pushing that agenda still.
More questions to Merete? How do you start clusters? In many countries in Asia, the private sectors are not strong and lack the cluster knowledge to build up clusters.
Yeah. Oh, it's a good question, Anukal. I think in areas where the companies are not so strong and not seeing interest, you could take a public lead on that. And I think it can be a good idea. I think what is very important is that it's not like being oversteered or overmanaged by the public side, but you should really make sure that this is aligned and in a good dialogue with the private sector. And then it might take a little bit more time. So be a bit more patient. I see too many cases of, after 2 years, you expect a miracle, and this will not happen. Working with clusters is a long time effort. It's a long approach. We see some of the best clustering takes at least 5 years to really show the impact. And this is also because you really need to bring the companies in and really have their engagement. So some kind of good balance between the public and the private side is also very important and very good.
Merete, here comes a nice one from Malay Krishna.
Yeah.
Is there a metric for effective cluster management as opposed to output metrics such as productivity and wage gains?
Oh, a good question. I think cluster management can look very differently. So I don't think there's one size fits all metric. So I think what is very important in the cluster management is that to have people in the CEO and in the staff that really understand the cluster community. So normally the best performing cluster managers have a private sector background or has a big network in that sector. So that's definitely something to look for. And in the management, you should also, and I know this is also a topic that IFA worked a lot with, but also with the board of the cluster, to have a chairman coming from the private sector and also have a board that represents the whole cluster structure. But then trying to answer the question, there have been several efforts in Europe to measure the effective cluster management. So there's this European cluster labeling scheme for the bronze, silver, and gold label. So that's at least a way of trying to measure the good impact of a cluster. But this is really going very nerdy. Yes.
Yes, let me see the Q&A. How to promote collaboration inside of the cluster when the companies are so individual?
Yeah, and that's this is where the magic touch of the cluster managers come into place, and it definitely takes time to build the trust. So as a cluster, new established cluster management, you need to spend a lot of time with your companies, both one-on-one to really understand the individual company, but you also need to bring the companies together and find out, okay, where's the common ground? Because all the companies will not, of course, want the same thing. So it will take a bit of time to organize both the strategy for the cluster, so where are we heading, and also the services, as I mentioned. So is it more important for us with the branding or the skilled workforce, or is it more important with us with the knowledge dissemination or the innovation projects? So really understanding between the companies, what are we aiming for here, is part of working with the companies on the ground.
Mm-hmm. And how to attract investors to a cluster, the farming part of this, yeah?
Yeah, but actually, and I think this is a feedback I heard recently, is that it's been a bit more easy right now because more investors now have a bit more time because they don't travel and their own value chains have also been disrupted. So where they might usually go with their investments, they are now looking for other investment possibilities. So, but again, like working with your ecosystem, you need to map what could be potential stakeholders for us. And then you need to, of course, discuss and mature this with them. I, for instance, also see in some cases clusters being started by investors because like, for instance, in the financial service sector, then there was a big interest from the investors to start a cluster and facilitate entrepreneurs and incubators coming from the financial sector. So it's again like all clustering, knocking doors, talking to stakeholders and trying to see, can this make sense for you? And in case we can bring you on board, what kind of activities do we need to organize to make this interesting? Is it like investor pitching? Is it incubators you're looking for? What kind of collaboration are you interested in?
Excellent. Well, thank you very much all. Let's leave it here. And we start a panel discussion with our Asian members, Tony, Jung Soo-young, Anuka, Professor Kashchulun, and Zvelma, and Merete also, you're welcome to participate. Let's start. I will ask a first question to Tony Lin and to Jung Soo-young, Tony from E3 Taiwan and Jung Soo-young from Kikox Korea. I would like to know how the clusters in Taiwan and in Korea have reacted to the COVID in the first time of the pandemic. What was the first reaction in general, how they worked? And also, what was your support from a national development agency, and what support you gave to the clusters in those difficult moments? Tony, do you want to start?
Okay, thank you, Patricia. Actually, Taiwanese government, when the virus outbreak, the Taiwanese government organized a national, the so-called national mask production team, and our government just organized the machinery industry cluster to help produce the mask. And our government also organized the healthcare sector to support the energy to help help improve, do some improvement. So actually our government act very quickly, so that the situation in Taiwan is quite better now. Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Jun, your microphone is closed. You have to reactivate it. Let's see if I can help you. No, I cannot listen to you. There you are.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yes. Long time no see.
Sorry, there is a big echo. I think you're very close to his computer. And yeah, and the two computers are making a bad connection. Can you close and hear your microphone?
Yes.
Let's try now.
Oh,
No.
Okay.
Much better, thank you.
Yes. We have nervous about coronavirus because our activities based on offline networking. So I can find the correct answer to sustainable cluster networking. So even though I cannot find the correct answer about this coronavirus.
Yeah, but what is the response of the companies in this moment? Have they stopped operations, or they have adapted quickly, or how is the collaboration running in this time?
In the beginning of the coronavirus, we established emergency response regional headquarters, and
so sorry. Okay, let's try a last time. Okay, Anukal, meanwhile, I'll go back to you. What is the situation? You were mentioning that the clusters are not so well developed in Thailand, but see, what was the reaction of business networks in these difficult times?
Okay.
yes.
Can you hear me, right?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, like I mentioned to Patricia before that in Thailand we have a cluster, but I think it's not as strong as in Europe or in the US. Regarding the coronavirus, the most of the reaction it come from directly from the government. So they it's like a top-down command that every business has to shut down. Not shut down, but you cannot open everything. Everything has to be closed. I mean, like I think it's in the middle of March, like around 16 or 17, because at that time the number of infected people is going up very fast. So in a few days, the government decided everything has to be shut down. So we just shut everything down, or the business has to close down. So that's, and after that, maybe about about a few weeks, we start to see the number of infected people coming down, and we the government still monitor everything and control everything. Basically, it's not the business part. Basically, it's more like the government control. Yeah.
And Anukal, what do you think it's now the support that is needed by Asian clusters to start or to get more stronger? What do you think is needed now?
Okay, you mean in general or regarding related to the virus?
Yeah, well, both in general and particularly in this situation that I understand it's even more difficult to support them. Yeah.
Okay. So right now regarding the virus, so it's now in Thailand is I think we can say that it's safe inside the country, because we have about almost zero new cases for the last more than 30 days already. So I think most of the people in Thailand, we are quite believe that there should be no infection within Thailand anymore. But there are cases coming from the outside that will bring in the virus into Thailand. So we control the border. Regarding the business, so now it start to coming back to start to operate the business again. So everything should be under control. That's what we believe, if we don't get new cases from the outside. And everything is still under monitoring, strict monitoring, to see how it goes. And I think in the next month, I think everything should be open as it used to be in the past within Thailand. Yeah. especially the most affected sector, like tourism, because maybe like about 15% of GDP of Thailand coming from tourism. So now all the hotels and all the airlines and everything related to the tourism is, everything is down. Some airline even closed down already, and many hotels are closed down already. So we hope that in the next month, if everything okay, we will get back the tourists. They call it bubble tourism, so it's maybe pocket different location within a control environment, so that we can have a tourism in a small area, something like that. So what people need from the government, I think the government understand it, so they try to push down the money, I mean the fund to support the SMEs, basically to help employment, to help with the debt and everything, to keep the business survive until we get back everything. Yeah, this is related to the virus. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Professor Hasulun, let's go to Mongolia. How do you see the situation and how it affects clusters and how they are responding?
Well, thank you very much, Patricia. And this is, if we talk about the large industrial clusters, I think that we don't have that much except in mining. And those in mining are actually not very much affected by virus. They are very capital heavy, equipment heavy. There are a lot of large trucks, transportation. So it moves actually without depending much on the conditions of virus. Maybe that would be a good phrasing. But if we look at the tourism, of course, it's very much affected by that. And I recently just thought after this yesterday's seminar that, maybe it would be a good idea for us to look into the concepts of clusters in healthcare. I think that we don't think about healthcare as an industry much, to be honest. I mean, it's like services maybe more. But if you look at this, actually they also have, I mean, in healthcare we have universities, we have researchers, we have companies which produce medicine, then we have a distribution networks. And I think maybe it will be a great idea for the Harvard Competitiveness Initiative to look into how we can measure the competitiveness of healthcare clusters, I mean, nationally. And the existing indices are very bad, actually. I think that yesterday we talked about that, but for example, 2 years ago, there was an international ranking of the countries which are ready for pandemic, I think. And USA, for example, was #1. And now we see that it's not actually what happens in reality. So we have to remeasure it and find the more policy recommendations to improve the national healthcare clusters, let's say so. Even if, for example, we have a great university, doesn't mean that we have good medicine or we have good companies which can produce cheaply and affordable medicine, for example, things like that. And we should probably look into how they are also interconnected. So this was my impression. And in my yesterday's presentation, I said that, for example, we have a very, very vague measures of healthcare internationally. For example, Mongolia was about number 102, I think, among 200 countries. But that doesn't mean much when we talk about the actual healthcare level. So we don't understand that. If we look at the sustainable development indices, they only measure, all that they measure is probably the average longevity of life and number of beds or something like that, and that's it. So I think that for this great Harvard network, I think looking into the healthcare would be the next possible step, because it's also very much closely related with biotechnology, with the most rapidly advancing industry. And countries, we can see that countries internationally begin to compete in healthcare biotechnology, in, for example, this race for the new vaccine among the globe. It's something which should be, I think, really studied. I think it's a good thing to look into. We had yesterday a great presentation from Taiwan, for example, and I know that we learn from the general, articles in journals that Taiwan did very well. But then again, we look at the system. It's not just a network of hospitals. Or we have to look into the financing part. How much it is financed publicly, budget, how much private insurance works with that, and how, for example, it is different from Korean experience. We know that Korea had a great testing system, how they were able to do that. And then we look at the Japan, which took completely different approach, very limited testing, still were able to manage somehow the spread of pandemic, how they did that. And things like that, I think. Here in Mongolia, we have mostly a public network of healthcare, which remained from socialist times, plus the private financing. But I would really look into that, would like to look into that. And so I urge, or maybe I would be welcoming the researchers from the TCI to work on that. Would be happily to make a joint paper or something like that.
Excellent. There you have a suggestion for the MOC network to have some research. By the way, you reminded me a nice case that we highlight in the TCI Recovery Playbook of a cluster in Medellin, in Colombia. It's it was a traditional textile industry cluster that now is transforming into advanced materials for health system, you know, for well, specific clothing needed for health. Yeah, masks are quite basic, but some of the things that are needed also that require more advanced fabrics is something where they want to focus on. I wonder if you have some cases all around the panel of this transformation that you foresee, or that you can see some of the industries that are changing due to COVID in the next phase.
Great idea.
Yeah. Do you have some cases like these, some examples that you want to share?
Maybe it's just starting, new trend.
It's true. It's everything going on. Okay. Okay, let's continue. I would like to know if what you foresee as the most disruptive effects in the long run for Asian companies, you know, after the COVID. What do you think it's going to be more different? I know in the digital run, in theory, from you seem to be like in a better place than other places. Asia looks from outside very digital. I wonder if you see here is like the big transformation that is going to happen in your economies. Tony, do you want to start?
Okay, I think there will be two kind of change. One is for like the physical change. The supply chain will, you know, maybe shift from like China to the Southeast Asia or to other place, but many companies need to try to adopt that. Another one is for like digital change. Yes, our government really focus on digitalization, but actually each company got a different, you know, level of digital capability. Some are able to use the IoT, use the machine learning, and others still use pen and paper to record everything. So it's really hard to be honest, it's really hard to help this company to acquire the enough digital capability. So I think, but it will play a more and more important role in the future. Yeah, that's my opinion.
How about Mongolia, Professor Kachulung?
Yes, we are a developing country, not a developed country like Taiwan or Korea. So in terms of digitalization, we are moving behind them. I think it's improving. A lot of services now, moving online shopping, online delivery, for example, things like that are developing very well. But I would say that probably there are limits to that in what you can do online. There are still physical delivery things, for example. Still you need a road network. Still you need big cars or bikers to deliver the product. So there is some kind of limitation to that. And secondly, I think that we in Asia, in East Asia, let's say so, probably on the verge of a very big change. Up until now, all of East Asia was working as a big exporter to the United States, Europe, other countries. We had this supply chain within Asia between different countries, and they were moving and then assembling things and then selling it. But I think what will happen if that kind of development path is not available anymore? So either these countries have to trade between each other, or these existing networks will have to be adapted to more domestic market, I think. And this will be a very interesting point, because up to now we always talked about globalization. Now we have to think what if there will be, let's say, for next 4 years, there will be more trend toward national economies, market protection, and so on. And it will surely disrupt, I think, international networks. The international clusters which existed in Asia will be more and more, I think, localized. I think that's what my experience, for example, because there were a few cases when companies in other countries could not even procure raw materials because, for example, raw materials were produced only in China. And once China logistics were closed, you couldn't even produce the simplest of thing. One example is, for example, Japan, which has so strong pharmaceutical industry, huge, biotechnology companies, and they couldn't produce simple masks for like maybe 4 months or maybe 5 months, even if they had money. That kind of incredible things happened, and that showed the weakness of existing networks among the Asian countries. So I think that now the trend of moving production toward China, maybe it will be more to Southeast Asia, but I think more local production will have to appear, and the local governments now support more local industries. Surely this is case, for example, for Japan. They are giving incredible amount of money for companies to move their production back to Japan, for example. Maybe something also like that happened in Korea. I'm not sure that, but I think they are also closing the production in China, moving to other countries like Vietnam and maybe back to Korea as well. And India is a good example of a country which wants to produce everything, domestic electronics, for example, inside India. So this is, I think, a good trend. As we are not industrial country, but more of the mining country, that doesn't affect us much. But I think that even in our case, the domestic production is stimulus kind of is beginning to appear and thinking. So I wouldn't be surprised even if United States, for example, would begin production of the cotton masks inside US, for example. And so this is a new trend. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jun, is that in Korea? Is there more national production even?
Yes. As we know, Korea is. Korea,
Oh.
sorry.
You're welcome.
Too many noise. Sorry. Korea is manufacturing countries, as we know, so we'll increase the competitiveness of manufacturing industries through automation of factories, smarting infrastructure, and collecting and analyzing data, and strengthening the competitiveness of industrial complexes. In addition, online data system, video system, and non-face-to-face support. Kickoffs will do that. Is okay?
It's okay. It's perfect. Yes, a lot of online interactions and networking. That's
sorry,
okay.
Sorry. The situation is not good, so sorry.
No problem. No problem. Anukal, I'm going to ask you about the sustainable transition that it was in many countries' agenda. Do you think now it will be affected because of the COVID? It will be still relevant and up in the priorities, or will be a bit delayed because of other priorities?
The sustainability of the business.
Yes, and sustainability of business, green business. Let's say green industries, green transition.
Okay. I think one thing that I see the trend, because there's a lot of discussion in Thailand quite a bit about this. I don't know, it's about green business. It's about the this medical tourism. As you know, Thailand has a lot of tourism industry in Thailand for some time, and we have also a medical tourism. After this coronavirus, since right now we have enough capacity to take care of the people infected from the virus, especially people from outside Thailand. So there's a discussion going on now whether we should take people from outside who are infected with the virus and maybe have them to come to Thailand within, like I said, a bubble economy, a bubble tourism. So they can have they will be treated and take care of, and then they can do some tourism within the period of after they are killed, something like that. So because we have capacity left to do that, because since we have a zero infected new cases, so that's one thing that I people talking about this trend. It could go on for another year if it's supposed that we don't get the vaccine, right? Mm-hmm. About this digitalization, it's I think I saw a lot of business in Thailand now. They start to do digitalization, which they don't do it before. Because of the virus, everything is closed down. So they are forced to become digital anyway. Education, business, everything. In the past, it's very difficult for them to, it's a challenge for them to go online or become digital. But this is a crisis that they have to convert themselves to digital. So I think because of this virus, it kind of accelerates the process in a way. So that's what I see. But one thing that I'm not sure is whether it's gonna continue in the future or not, because once everything become back to normal, maybe they become less digital as before. That's what I'm not sure yet. Yeah.
Thank you, Anukal. Tony, I have one last question for you about the role of an economic development agency that you play in E3, also your cluster unit. what do you think will be your new role in the new normal? You know, things are changing, the collaboration dynamics are changing, the needs from the companies are changing. What do you think is going to be the role of an economic development organization?
Actually, that's a really big question. But right now, I think in Taiwan, the cluster organization just face a new problem. It's like that when the government got the resource, when the government got the subsidy, everything is well, and the cluster organization work very well. But once the government run out of money, run out of the resource, the entire cluster crash. So it's just like a cycle. So now, in my opinion, now we try to find a pattern or a model or kind of solution to solve this challenge or problem. Just actually, for example, in this pandemic, we just find that okay, other kind of cluster is also important because Taiwan used to put too much resource on ICT industry. Just like South Korea and Japan, we focus on the ICT industry clusters too much. So now we try to take care of other kind of cluster organization. But now we just the government has no idea how to help this organization. Or they can only find out that okay, just put the money. But once they run out of money, the situation just get worse. So our role is trying to find a solution or model or pattern to solve this challenge. And to be honest, it's very difficult, and we're still trying to find a way. Yeah, but I think maybe that's also an example or a case for other countries. Yeah.
I think so. Merit, do you want to elaborate a bit on your experience in Denmark on that and other European places?
Yeah, it's a big question, Tony, and you're not the only one struggling. So I was just actually trying to find a webinar we did in TCI Network. I will put the link in later on. But I mean, sharing some experiences on how clusters has dealt with this. A general recommendation is that don't rely on one funding source because policy priorities might change and then you're out of money basically. So trying to create some kind of patchwork funding, you could say, where you really try to bring in different funding sources. So also having perhaps some kind of public also private co-funding, so making the companies pay either by membership fees or for paid services. So then you really need to develop like a service portfolio, so each of the companies can see a benefit. Then besides the public funding, some clusters also move into more project-oriented funding. So because as I mentioned, clusters can be this change agent or have transformational roles. So they might have projects on automatization or digitalization, run also from regions or municipalities. So it's not like just one entity that is like a cluster program, but it's also more operational projects being run. We see a tendency now in Europe that many clusters are very strong on the circular economy. So they are really good at, organizing these big platforms, bringing all stakeholders, and then they run circular economy projects for many different sectors. So it's not like just, a manufacturing cluster doing this for manufacturing companies, but also doing it for other sectors. So that's also a way of trying to, deal with the funding challenge. But it is a challenge. I think even mature super clusters are in this kind of, so it's definitely something you need to pay attention to all the time and look again for not like just 1 or 2 years life cycle, but really, okay, we want to be here in the long run and how to develop a good long-term business model. And this is also a way to work with your board in the cluster saying, yeah, but if you want us here in the long run, how can we make a joint effort? Sometimes I also see universities chipping in saying, yeah, but we need to focus on the third mission. We need to focus on more business collaboration. and the clusters is a great way of, ticking that box. So they pay with paid membership fees, or again, projects, saying, yeah, we need to run a project on, robotics, for instance, testing different robotic types. So this is a good way to use the clusters of a way of doing this. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, Merida, you really got a point. I think in Taiwan, everyone just try to rely on the government and no one try to contribute. No one. So I think the challenge is that we need to find out the, incentive or solution to convince everyone just, contribute their resource and knowledge to help this cluster organization. Otherwise, just, everyone just crush when the government run out of money.
Yeah, and it's quite terrible because you spend so much time, creating the trust with the companies and finding the right people to run it. And then if it's like a closure, then it's not great for anybody. But actually, we also see, coming a little bit back to the investor and private money discussion, that more private foundations are also moving into this. And I hope the pandemic also perhaps can push this trend a bit, saying, yeah, but we need to, pay greater attention to the kind of societies we promote and the way we, manage this. So perhaps more private foundations can also see an interest in, we need to, work with clusters in creating more fair societies, and also still support, of course, businesses. So I see good examples of that, again, in the robotics, in sound clusters. I also see more local communities in municipalities, mayors saying, yeah, but we need to make a difference here. We're quite remote, nobody visits us. So in case we want something to happen for us, like in tourism or in production, we need to set up a cluster. It might be very small, it might just be 20 companies, a very small ecosystem from the beginning. But it's a good way of getting this starting because you have the local engagement. We have some great examples also in Europe where vocational schools are quite active in the early phases of starting a cluster. So again, the patchwork funding is a little bit the key here. Again, it takes, again, the cluster management, because you need then good project managers, because dealing with one funding source is a bit easy, but dealing then with 5 or 10 different sources, then it gets more complicated. So this is where you also need the cluster secretariat and a good project manager that really, is not sweating with complex Excel files.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
Just to add on that, Merete, I think, it could be interesting for us to tackle in the next webinar of the TCI Asia chapter, all these things. I think there's a lot to develop on cluster culture in Asia, to develop more the cluster capacities, a shared view, some common understanding between all the stakeholders, some joint strategy, how to build that. And
in the second year, they will try to find future.
Work together on that, on the leadership, the governance of the cluster initiatives. And this is something important. It's not easy and it takes a lot of time, but I see some of the development agencies and governments that have done it better globally. They have been in this path of accompany business networks and clusters to develop. So I think it's really interesting to go further than that. Okay, let me close here the panel. Thank you very much. Big applause to all of you participating. That was really nice. Thank you. And for the last part of the webinar today, we are going to share with you the TCI Recovery Playbook, this publication that we have been working on in the last months and that we have prepared. It's a guide for economic development and organization and cluster organizations in the path to economic recovery. We have organized it in 3 phases. This is phase 1, mobilizing the crisis response. some general data on the World Economic Outlook projections. But what I try to find is this one. These three phases are explained here. I give the word to Merete, one of the authors, together with Christian Kettels, to tell you a little bit more how we think the role of clusters and of economic development organizations should look like after COVID and during the pandemic. Yeah, Merete.
Yeah, thank you, Patricia. Yeah, so we tried to develop a three-phase model, and this is the overview. So in case you're looking for one slide that hopefully covers the most, this is the three phase. So the first phase is about mobilizing the crisis response. I think we heard some good examples here today on this. Then the next phase that many countries now are facing is how to live with the pandemic, because it might be here for a long while. The hunt for the vaccine is ongoing, but it's not there, not even close. So this might be quite a long while. And then, of course, we are interested in igniting new growth, because we will have to recover from the crisis, of course. And then we try to split it a little bit, keep it a little bit longer. Patricia, please. So the first one is on the role of the economic development organization. So for the ones that having this kind of task, then there's some specific advice on this. And then in the bottom layer also, how can clusters adapt to this? So this is hopefully one overview that can cover the most. Yes, thank you, Patricia. And then we also try to, so the casebook, apart from the phases, also covers many cases, because some of the cases are really what we need to be inspired from. So Patricia did a great job in getting many cases, and I know we still get them. So thank you for that, because we for us it's very important to understand the role of both economic development organizations and clusters in all of this. We might not be, the most important player, but for us it's very important to understand and show that this has meant something, and also are very important in the recovery. So this is one great example from Upper Austria. And they basically transformed their office to a call-out office, and called many companies in the region to say, okay, how are you doing? Basically, how can we help you? How can you help you with the aid programs around? How can you get access? And they reached out here to 3,000 companies, and they had many nice specific questions, and they were happy about being called. So it was not a bother, it was a help. What was also very nice is that this led to more innovation projects. So again, let's not waste a good crisis. This actually led to say, yeah, but we need new innovations in different areas, in digitalization, as we discussed, on how to kickstart or maintain the green transition. So 10 at least new innovation projects came out of this approach. So a very nice example from Upper Austria.
This is a nice example also of Querétaro Automotive Cluster in Mexico. It's a very simple thing if you want, but it is, I think, a very important decision that the board took at the very early moment of the crisis. They decided, all the big companies there decided to alleviate the financial obligations and payment cycles of regional suppliers and providers. I think this is one of the things that clusters are agile for and can make quick decisions on that. Here is another example I mentioned before on the textile on Medellin, Colombia. And this is from the business tourism cluster, supporting the entrepreneurial ecosystem to adopt all the protocols necessary to receive certification that gives security to visitors in the region. I think this is also something important for all tourist destinations to help the entrepreneurs and the companies related to tourism, in this case, business tourism. In the phase 2, we also have other cases like this air freight route open for South Australian exporters that was very quickly put in place. It was a complex collaboration between the South Australian government and one of their financial instruments that they have, and also the exporting companies, and included some regional food clusters that come together to have this direct air freight route between Adelaide and Singapore to keep on supplying on food and well, the regular production. This is another example from Ontario, Canada, the Blue Water Wood Alliance adapting quickly their services and communication. Many clusters adopted this being a hub for communication among all the companies. They run through Zoom and with the communication collaboration app. All the requests from the members, they quickly identify all the needs and gave solutions within the cluster. And then it also helped them to engage with the local administration officials that found this like the best platform to have a pulse of what was going on in the industry at this important moment. So you could see people from the government participating in the regular webinars in Ontario. This is, for example, another initiative from the financial services cluster in Ecuador. They help or they facilitated to adopt digital payment to the local commerce. More than 1,000 small shops that quickly have to adopt digital payment solutions when the lockdown was in place. If they didn't want to stop their production and their services, they had to quickly adopt this. The Cloud with You, hashtag Cloud with You was the meeting point for the automotive industry in Nuevo León, in Mexico. The cluster led early surveys when there was no more information of what was going on in the industry. The cluster members could help each other to take important decisions on employment, on production, on everything in difficult times. And it also was a way to be in continuous dialogue with the CEOs. They have a CEOs WhatsApp group where they have been connecting regularly, something that, well, they could do in other ways, but it happened in the cluster because they had been working before and they know each other. And I was talking last week with Manuel Montoya, the cluster manager of this cluster, and he mentioned that many big companies that had been reluctant to join the cluster for many years finally now have joined it because they have seen it's like the place to be in this moment. This is the fashion cluster I already mentioned, and going to phase 3, igniting sustainable growth. Here we have, some of the more prominent things, most of them, they are still working on it. But for example, the Bogota Chamber of Commerce took the chance to redefine the cluster strategy of the 17 cluster initiatives they are having. Or helping, focusing on 4 strategic axes: safe back to work, new business models, digital transformation, and sales reactivation. Rethinking innovation Denmark, this is something that Merete has been tackling also, the need to still rethink innovation and be more innovative than ever, and how to change the methods of working in the clusters for matchmaking online, to lead to more participants, more activities, and have more outcomes and more efficiency in the clusters in Denmark. This is also an initiative from Metropole Ruhr Business in Germany, where they are rethinking how to increase the region's competitiveness, building strategic alliances with global partners. They are rethinking what new perspectives and reorientation of their strategy. Changes in value chains are some of the topics, reduction of global linkages, green transition, social cohesion, skills development to bring digital transformation to a next level, how to reorganize public administration towards completely digital, and the implementation of a smart specialization strategy. And this is the case of Restart Tourism in Iceland that we have already mentioned. And for example, the Flanders logistics cluster, this VIL, Logistic Expert Clusters in Belgium, they have created a task force to support the logistic chains, that is an essential industry under high pressure in these times. And they have done it through the clusters and with the cluster help. So these are some of the examples that we wanted to share with you. The publication is ready to download if you want. It's free for TCI members, and it's available in our website under the COVID space. You can access to it. And this is all from our side. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy it. It has been great for Merete and for me, I think, to join you for these 2 days. I hope you had a global perspective of what's going on in clustering, on what themes we can cover together, and how TCI can help you to build stronger clusters in Asia. And well, let's keep in touch and work for next webinars. Sepelma was saying that we should do this once a month at least. So let's continue the conversation. Thank you very much. Velma, I give you the word, the final words. Oh, Velma is frozen. Meanwhile, Merete, do you want to close officially this 2-day conference?
Yeah, thank you, Patricia. I think you did great already, but yeah, just let me underline, I really appreciated all the efforts being put into this and creating this open kind of dialogue on how to improve things in Asia. And as Anukal just mentioned in the chat, and I think this is an ongoing thing, us working with clusters, there's no fixed concept, so we might have definitions and way of working with this, but it's ongoing and it needs to adapt to the reality we're working with. And we've seen this over the last month, but that's the perspective, that's the spirit. So I hope we kickstarted some new discussions and some new ideas. Please reach out to Patricia and me on for further ideas and perspectives, because this is the kind of community we want to drive forward. So we are open and member driven, and are leaning on also your advice or inputs or experiences. So it was a great 2-day event. I wish I could have been in Mongolia with you, but this was hopefully second best, and at least we got some good discussions on the road. Yes.
Thank you, Merete. Let's see if Svelma or Mongolian can say goodbye, our host today. Meanwhile, yeah, we are receiving a lot of thank yous here. Thank you all for connecting. And also, if you have cases that you want to share with us, as Merete was saying, the play will be a growing inspiration tool. So we hope to include more cases and more cases from Asia on that. Please share with us, and we will be eager to share. Hello, it's Velma. I see Batulga now. Connected?
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Excellent, Velma. So the last words are for you.
Yes, of course. My connection was failed. Sorry.
We can hear you okay now.
Okay. No. Thank you, all of you. 2 days we organized the 5th International conference of the MOC and first webinar of the TCI Asian chapter and on clusters and new normal for Asia. I hope that many of you, the attendees, got right, correct understanding and new knowledge in accordance with the clusters and new better normal. And now, furthermore, we will continue our discussion and continue the webinars gradually. And I hope you join us in the near future, and we will collaborate all together, not only throughout Asia and all over the world. We contribute our knowledge and experience to the cluster development of every country. And I would like to thank all of, especially Meredith and Patricia. Thank you for your vital contribution to the Asian Chapters Conference and webinar. Also, many thanks to all attendees of this webinar, and thank you all panelists of today's webinar. Thank you. Wish all of you the prosperous and good health. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Oh,